Hello and welcome to History Bedtime Stories. High above the cloud-shrouded peaks of the Peruvian Andes, where the air grows thin and the world seems to touch the heavens themselves, lies one of humanity's most extraordinary achievements. A city of stone and mystery that has captured the imagination of explorers, archaeologists, and dreamers for more than a century. This is Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas, a place where ancient engineering meets cosmic spirituality, where every stone tells a story of a civilization that reached heights both literal and metaphorical that still astound us today. But tonight, as we settle into this journey together, we're not just going to explore the ruins that thousands of tourists photograph each day. We're going to uncover the real secrets hidden within those precisely cut granite blocks, the mysteries that have puzzled scientists and historians for generations. We're going to discover why this magnificent city was built in one of the most impossible locations on Earth, why it was abandoned just as mysteriously as it was created, and why its very existence challenges everything we thought we knew about pre-Columbian civilizations in the Americas. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let your imagination transport you back 500 years, to a time when the Inca Empire stretched from modern-day Colombia to Chile, when Quechua voices echoed through these mountain corridors, and when Machu Picchu was not a lost city, but a living, breathing testament to human ingenuity and spiritual devotion. But before our journey begins, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It's a simple way to support the channel. I am also always curious to know where in the world and at what time are you joining me tonight. So, I would really love to hear from you in the comments. The year was 1911, and the world was a very different place. The Wright brothers had only recently taken to the skies. Henry Ford was revolutionizing transportation with the Model T, and much of South America remained unexplored by Western eyes. It was in this age of discovery that a young American academic named Hiram Bingham III would stumble upon something that would make him immortal in the annals of archaeological history. Bingham wasn't looking for Machu Picchu when he found it. In fact, he was searching for something else entirely, the legendary last capital of the Incas, a place called Vilcabamba, where the final Inca rulers had supposedly made their stand against Spanish conquistadors. What he found instead would prove to be far more significant than anything he had dared to imagine. The journey to that fateful discovery began in the elegant salons of Lima, where Bingham had met with Peruvian officials and fellow academics who spoke in hushed tones about ruins hidden in the cloud forests of the Urubamba Valley. Local indigenous people, they said, had known of these ruins for generations, but the outside world remained ignorant of their existence. The very remoteness that had protected Machu Picchu from Spanish destruction had also kept it hidden from scholarly investigation. Armed with letters of introduction and accompanied by a small expedition team, Bingham set out from Cusco in July 1911. The journey was arduous beyond modern comprehension. There were no roads, no bridges, no reliable maps. The expedition had to hack their way through dense jungle, ford rushing rivers, and navigate treacherous mountain paths that seemed to lead nowhere. On July 24, 1911, after days of difficult travel, Bingham's party reached a small settlement on the slopes of Huayna Picchu Mountain. Local residents, members of the Quechua-speaking indigenous community, told him of ruins higher up the mountain. A boy named Anacleto Alvarez offered to guide him to the site, along with another local resident named Melchor Arteaga. What happened next has been recounted countless times, but it never loses its power to amaze. As Bingham climbed the steep, jungle-covered slopes, following ancient stone steps that seemed to emerge from the earth itself, he began to glimpse walls of cut stone through the vegetation. Then, suddenly, the jungle opened up, and there before him lay a sight that would take his breath away and change his life forever. Terraces of green grass cascaded down the mountainside like giant steps built for the gods themselves. Magnificent stone buildings, their walls fitted together with such precision that not even a knife blade could slip between the blocks, rose from carefully planned plazas and courtyards. And overlooking it all, the distinctive peak of Machu Picchu pointed toward the sky like an ancient finger reaching for the heavens. But here's what made this discovery even more remarkable. Bingham wasn't the first outsider to see Machu Picchu. In fact, families of local Quechua people had been living among the ruins, carefully maintaining the terraces and protecting the site for generations. When Bingham arrived, he was greeted by Anacleto's family, who had made their home among the ancient stones. They had been the true guardians of Machu Picchu, preserving it not as a tourist destination or archaeological site, but as a living part of their cultural heritage. The implications of this are profound and often overlooked in popular accounts of the discovery. Machu Picchu was never truly lost. It had simply been hidden from the outside world by people who understood its sacred significance and chose to protect it from the destruction that had befallen so many other Inca sites during the centuries of colonial rule. Bingham's photographs and reports of the site would eventually make him famous around the world, earning him the nickname the real Indiana Jones and inspiring countless adventure stories. But his initial reaction was more measured than the breathless excitement one might expect. He recognized immediately that he was looking at something extraordinary, but it would take years of careful excavation and study to begin to understand what he had truly found. To understand the true secret of Machu Picchu, we must first grapple with the sheer impossibility of its construction. This isn't merely a matter of ancient people building something impressive. This is a case of ancient people achieving what seems to defy the laws of physics and engineering, even by modern standards. Consider the logistics alone. Machu Picchu sits at an elevation of 2,430 meters, nearly 8,000 feet, above sea level, perched on a narrow ridge between two towering peaks in one of the most geologically unstable regions on Earth. The site is accessible only by narrow mountain paths that wind precariously along cliff faces and through cloud forests. There were no wheels in pre-Columbian South America, no metal tools capable of cutting granite, no draft animals larger than llamas, and no cranes or modern machinery. Yet somehow, the Inca engineers managed to transport massive granite blocks, some weighing more than 50 tons, up these impossible mountain paths and fit them together with a precision that modern stonemasons struggle to match. The famous Intihuatana stone, carved from a single piece of granite and positioned to track the movement of the sun throughout the year, demonstrates a level of astronomical knowledge and stoneworking skill that challenges our understanding of what was possible in the 15th century. The precision of Inca stonework at Machu Picchu goes beyond mere craftsmanship. It represents a completely different approach to construction than anything seen in European architecture of the same period. While medieval European builders relied heavily on mortar to hold their stones together, Inca engineers created interlocking blocks that formed structures stronger than the surrounding bedrock itself. This technique, known as ashlar masonry, involved cutting each stone to fit perfectly with its neighbors, creating joints so tight that they remain weatherproof after 5 centuries of exposure to the harsh Andean climate. But achieving this level of precision required something even more remarkable than skilled craftsmanship. It required a sophisticated understanding of geology, seismology, and structural engineering. The Andes are one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. Powerful earthquakes regularly shake the mountains, and any rigid structure would quickly be reduced to rubble. The Inca engineers solved this problem by designing their buildings to move with the earth rather than resist it. The stones of Machu Picchu are cut with slightly beveled edges and fitted together in such a way that they can shift and settle during earthquakes without losing their structural integrity. Modern engineers studying these techniques have been astounded by their sophistication. Computer modeling has shown that Inca buildings can withstand earthquakes that would destroy contemporary concrete and steel structures. The secret lies not just in the precision of the stonework, but in the mathematical principles underlying the construction, principles that weren't discovered by European science until centuries later. But the engineering marvels of Machu Picchu extend far beyond the buildings themselves. The entire site is a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering, with sophisticated drainage systems that prevent erosion and flooding even during the heaviest mountain storms. Underground channels carry water away from the terraces and buildings with such efficiency that the site has remained stable for more than 500 years without any modern maintenance. The agricultural terraces that cascade down the mountainside represent perhaps the most impressive aspect of Inca engineering at Machu Picchu. These andans, as they're called in Quechua, were not simply carved into the hillside. They were built up layer by layer using a complex system of stones, gravel, and specially prepared soil that created microclimates capable of supporting crops at an altitude where agriculture should have been impossible. Each terrace is essentially a raised garden bed designed to maximize growing potential in the challenging mountain environment. The bottom layer consists of large stones that provide drainage and prevent erosion. Above that lies a layer of smaller stones and gravel that filters water and prevents the soil from washing away. The topmost layer is a carefully prepared mixture of soil, compost, and organic matter that provides the perfect growing medium for corn, potatoes, and quinoa. But here's where the engineering becomes almost magical. The terraces were positioned and oriented to take advantage of microclimates created by the mountain topography. Some terraces receive more sunlight and are warmer, making them suitable for heat-loving crops like corn. Others are positioned to capture moisture from the clouds that regularly envelop the site, creating conditions perfect for root vegetables and hardy grains. The entire agricultural system was designed to be self-sustaining, with water flowing from terrace to terrace in a carefully controlled cascade that irrigated the entire complex without waste. Modern agricultural scientists studying these systems have found them to be more efficient and sustainable than many contemporary farming methods. To truly understand Machu Picchu, we must look beyond its impressive engineering and consider its deeper significance as a sacred landscape. For the Inca, every mountain, every rock, every spring was imbued with spiritual meaning. The location of Machu Picchu wasn't chosen simply for its strategic value or defensive position. It was selected because it occupied a place of profound cosmic significance in the Inca understanding of the universe. The Inca concept of sacred geography, known as the Sikh system, divided the landscape into invisible lines of spiritual force that radiated out from the capital city of Cusco like spokes of a cosmic wheel. Along these Sikh lines were placed huacas, sacred sites that could be anything from springs and caves to specially shaped rocks and mountain peaks. Machu Picchu was positioned at the intersection of several important Sikh lines, making it a place where the spiritual forces of the earth were particularly concentrated. The site's relationship to the surrounding mountains provides crucial clues to its sacred function. Huayna Picchu, the distinctive peak that rises above the ruins, was considered a sacred APU, a mountain spirit that watched over the valley below. The Inca believed that these mountain spirits were their ancestors, divine beings who controlled the weather, the water, and the fertility of the land. From various points within Machu Picchu, the ruins align perfectly with significant astronomical events. The Intihuatana stone, whose name means hitching post of the sun, is positioned so that it casts no shadow at noon during the winter solstice. This alignment was not accidental. It represents a sophisticated understanding of astronomy that allowed the Inca to track the movement of celestial bodies and predict seasonal changes crucial for agriculture. The Temple of the Three Windows, one of the most sacred structures at Machu Picchu, is oriented to frame the constellation of the Southern Cross, which the Inca called Chicana and considered a symbol of their understanding of cosmic order. During certain times of the year, the rising sun aligns perfectly with these windows, creating a spectacular light show that would have held deep spiritual significance for the people who gathered there for ceremonies. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Machu Picchu's sacred geography is how it functions as a three-dimensional map of Inca cosmology. The Inca believed the universe was divided into three worlds: Hanan Pasha, the upper world of the gods; Ke Pasha, the middle world of human existence; and Yuri Pasha, the underworld of the ancestors and spirits. Machu Picchu's architecture reflects this three-part cosmic division. The upper part of the city, with its temples and sacred structures, represents Hanan Pasha. The middle section, containing the residential areas and administrative buildings, corresponds to Ke Pasha, and the lower agricultural terraces, built into the earth itself, symbolize Yuri Pasha. This cosmic mapping extends to the smallest details of the site's construction. The stepped motif that appears throughout Inca architecture, visible in everything from the shape of the terraces to the design of ritual fountains, represents the Chicana or Andean cross, a symbol that encompasses the Inca understanding of space, time, and spiritual order. Water played a particularly important role in the sacred geography of Machu Picchu. The site includes 16 ritual fountains, each carved from solid granite and designed to create specific sounds as water flows through them. These fountains weren't merely decorative. They were instruments in elaborate ceremonies that honored the water spirits who brought life to the high Andes. The Inca considered water to be a divine force, a gift from the mountain spirits that had to be honored and protected. The sophisticated water management system at Machu Picchu reflects not just advanced engineering skills, but a deep spiritual relationship with the natural world that most modern societies have lost. Recent archaeological research has revealed that Machu Picchu was connected to other sacred sites throughout the region by a network of carefully maintained roads and paths. These connections weren't merely practical. They were part of a larger sacred landscape that encompassed the entire Urubamba Valley and beyond. For many years after its discovery, the purpose of Machu Picchu remained a mystery that spawned dozens of theories, from lost cities of gold to ancient astronomical observatories to refugee settlements for Inca nobility fleeing Spanish conquest. But painstaking archaeological research over the past several decades has provided us with a much clearer picture of what Machu Picchu actually was. And the answer is both simpler and more extraordinary than the wilder theories might suggest. The overwhelming evidence now points to Machu Picchu having served as a royal estate, a private retreat built for the Inca Emperor Pachacuti and his family sometime around 1450 CE. This conclusion is based on multiple lines of evidence, from the style and quality of the construction to the types of artifacts found at the site to historical records that describe similar royal estates throughout the empire. Pachacuti, whose name means earthshaker in Quechua, was the ninth Sapa Inca and the founder of the empire as we know it. Under his rule, the Inca expanded from a small kingdom centered around Cusco to a vast empire that stretched across the Andes. He was also a great builder and urban planner, credited with redesigning Cusco itself and establishing many of the architectural and administrative innovations that would define Inca civilization. The idea that such a powerful ruler would build a private estate in a seemingly remote location might seem strange to modern minds, but it makes perfect sense in the context of Inca culture and politics. For the Inca elite, Land ownership was the ultimate symbol of power and wealth. The emperor and his family controlled vast estates throughout the empire, worked by thousands of peasants who provided tribute in the form of labor and agricultural products. But Machu Picchu was no ordinary estate. Everything about its construction and layout suggests that it was designed as a place of extraordinary luxury and spiritual significance, a retreat where the emperor could commune with the gods and demonstrate his divine authority over the natural world. The quality of stonework at Machu Picchu is consistently superior to that found at most other Inca sites, including important administrative centers and fortresses. The most sacred buildings display the finest example of what archaeologists call imperial Inca architecture, stonework so precise and sophisticated that it was reserved for the most important royal and religious structures. The layout of the site also supports the royal estate theory. Machu Picchu is divided into distinct sectors that correspond to the different functions of a royal household. The upper sector contains temples and ceremonial buildings where the emperor would have conducted religious rituals and received important visitors. The lower sector includes residential complexes of varying quality, suggesting a hierarchical society where nobles, administrators, servants, and artisans each had their designated living areas. Archaeological evidence suggests that Machu Picchu housed a relatively small population, perhaps 300 to 750 people at its peak. This number is consistent with what we know about Inca royal estates from Spanish colonial records. These weren't cities in the modern sense, but rather elaborate household complexes that supported the extended families, retainers, and servants of the imperial elite. The agricultural terraces at Machu Picchu were designed to produce luxury crops rather than basic subsistence foods. Evidence suggests they were used to grow fine varieties of corn that were reserved for royal consumption and religious ceremonies. Some terraces may have been used to cultivate coca leaves, which held sacred significance for the Inca and were strictly controlled by the imperial administration. One of the most intriguing aspects of the royal estate theory concerns the role of women at Machu Picchu. Archaeological analysis of skeletal remains found at the site has revealed a surprising demographic pattern. The majority of the bodies discovered are female, and many show evidence of having lived lives of relative privilege and ease. This has led some researchers to speculate that Machu Picchu may have served as a residence for the Aklakuna, the chosen women who played important roles in Inca religious and political life. These women, selected for their beauty and noble birth, lived in special compounds where they wove fine textiles, prepared ritual foods, and participated in religious ceremonies. Some became wives or concubines of the emperor, while others remained celibate and devoted their lives to serving the gods. The presence of numerous grinding stones and food preparation areas at Machu Picchu supports this theory, as does the discovery of exceptionally fine textiles and pottery that would have been associated with high-status women's work. The site's emphasis on water worship and lunar alignments also makes sense in this context, as water and lunar cycles were particularly associated with feminine spiritual power in Inca culture. But perhaps the most compelling evidence for the royal estate theory comes from what happened to Machu Picchu after Pacacuti's death. According to Inca custom, when an emperor died, his mummy was preserved and continued to own his private property. The deceased emperor's descendants were responsible for maintaining his estates and conducting ceremonies to honor his memory. This system created a problem that ultimately contributed to the empire's downfall. Each new emperor had to build his own estates and conquer new territories to support them, since he couldn't inherit land from his predecessors. The result was constant expansion and an increasingly complex system of royal properties that drained resources from the imperial administration. When the Spanish arrived in 1532, they found an empire already weakened by civil war and succession disputes. The last independent Inca ruler, Atahualpa, was captured and killed by Francisco Pizarro, and the remaining Inca nobility fled to mountain strongholds like Vilcabamba to continue their resistance. It was during this period of chaos and upheaval that Machu Picchu was abandoned. With Pacacuti's descendants dead, scattered, or in hiding, there was no one left to maintain the royal estate. The terraces slowly overgrew with jungle vegetation, the buildings emptied of their treasures and furnishings, and within a generation or two, the site was known only to local indigenous communities who preserved its memory as a place of ancient power and sacred significance. To truly understand the secrets of Machu Picchu, we must imagine what life was like within its stone walls when the city was alive and thriving. Far from being merely a collection of impressive ruins, this was once a living community where hundreds of people carried out the complex daily routines that supported one of the most sophisticated civilizations in human history. The day would have begun before dawn, as it still does in the high Andes, with the gradual lightening of the sky above the eastern peaks. The first to rise would have been the servants and attendants responsible for maintaining the fires that provided warmth in the thin mountain air. In the darkness before sunrise, figures would have moved quietly through the stone corridors, carrying water from the sacred fountains and preparing the spaces for the day's activities. As the first rays of sunlight touched the Intihuatana stone, priests and astronomers would have gathered to observe and record the sun's movement. This wasn't merely a religious ritual, but a crucial scientific activity that helped maintain the calendar system upon which the entire empire depended. The Inca measured time not just in days and months, but in complex cycles that coordinated agricultural activities, religious festivals, and political obligations across thousands of miles of territory. The emperor himself, if he was in residence, would have awakened in quarters of unimaginable luxury. Archaeological evidence suggests that the royal chambers were furnished with the finest textiles in the empire, woven from vicuña wool so soft that it was reserved exclusively for imperial use. These textiles weren't merely decorative. They served as walls, carpets, bedding, and ceremonial garments in a culture that had developed weaving to the level of high art. The morning routine would have included elaborate bathing rituals in the sacred fountains. For the Inca, cleanliness was not just a matter of personal hygiene but a spiritual necessity. Water was considered sacred, and the act of bathing in the carefully engineered fountains of Machu Picchu would have been both a practical and religious activity that connected the bather to the cosmic forces that governed the universe. Food preparation at Machu Picchu would have been a complex and hierarchical activity reflecting the sophisticated cuisine of the Inca elite. While common people throughout the empire subsisted primarily on potatoes, quinoa, and occasional llama meat, the royal table at Machu Picchu would have featured delicacies from across the empire. Fresh fish carried by relay runners from the coast, tropical fruits from the eastern jungle, and dozens of varieties of corn and potatoes grown in microclimates created by the site's ingenious agricultural terraces. The Aklakuna, if they were indeed resident at Machu Picchu as some evidence suggests, would have spent their days in activities that combined practical work with spiritual devotion. These chosen women were master weavers, capable of producing textiles so fine that Spanish chroniclers compared them to silk. They also prepared chicha, the fermented corn beverage that played a crucial role in Inca religious ceremonies and social gatherings. But their most important function may have been as keepers of oral tradition. In a culture without written language, knowledge was preserved and transmitted through elaborate systems of songs, stories, and rituals. The Aklakuna were among the most educated people in the empire, responsible for memorizing vast amounts of information about history, astronomy, medicine, and religious practice. The middle of the day would have brought a flurry of administrative activity. Despite its remote location, Machu Picchu was connected to the broader empire through the remarkable road system that allowed messages and goods to travel with surprising speed across vast distances. Chasca runners would have arrived regularly with news from Cusco, tribute payments from distant provinces, and requests for guidance on matters ranging from agricultural planning to legal disputes. The Inca administration was remarkably sophisticated, relying on a decimal system that organized everything from military units to tax obligations. At Machu Picchu, administrators would have used quipu, the complex system of knotted strings that served as both a record-keeping device and a form of written communication. Recent research has suggested that quipu may have been capable of recording not just numerical information, but narrative and linguistic data as well. Afternoons might have been devoted to religious ceremonies and astronomical observations. The Inca calendar was filled with festivals and ritual obligations, many of which would have been observed with particular solemnity at a sacred site like Machu Picchu. These weren't merely symbolic activities. They were essential to maintaining the cosmic order upon which the empire's prosperity depended. The ceremonies would have involved elaborate offerings to the mountain spirits, the sun god Inti, and the moon goddess Mama Quilla. These offerings might include precious textiles, finely worked gold and silver objects, and even human sacrifices during the most important festivals. The Inca practiced human sacrifice, but it was a rare and sacred act reserved for occasions of extreme importance, such as the coronation of a new emperor or times of great crisis. As evening approached, the social life of Machu Picchu would have centered around shared meals and entertainment. Despite the rigid hierarchy of Inca society, there was also a strong tradition of reciprocity and communal celebration. Music and dance were integral parts of Inca culture, with different instruments and rhythms associated with specific activities and social groups. The panpipe music that still echoes through the Andes today would have filled the stone corridors of Machu Picchu, accompanied by drums made from llama skin and flutes carved from bone and wood. Dancing wasn't merely entertainment, but a form of prayer and social bonding that reinforced the connections between individuals and their community. As night fell over the sacred city, the last activities of the day would have been devoted to observation of the stars and planets. The Inca were skilled astronomers who tracked celestial movements with remarkable precision. The clear, thin air of the high Andes provided ideal conditions for stargazing, and the priests of Machu Picchu would have been responsible for maintaining the complex astronomical knowledge that guided agricultural and ceremonial cycles throughout the empire. The constellations visible from Machu Picchu held deep spiritual significance for the Inca. They saw in the night sky not just points of light, but a cosmic narrative that told the story of their people and their relationship to the gods. The Milky Way, which they called Mayu or the Celestial River, was believed to be connected to the earthly rivers that brought life to their crops and communities. The century that has passed since Hiram Bingham first photographed Machu Picchu has brought a continuous stream of archaeological discoveries that have revolutionized our understanding of this remarkable site. Each new excavation season reveals additional layers of complexity and sophistication that challenge our assumptions about pre-Columbian American civilizations. One of the most significant recent discoveries has been the identification of previously unknown structures hidden beneath centuries of vegetation and soil accumulation. Ground-penetrating radar and other remote sensing technologies have revealed that the visible ruins of Machu Picchu represent only a fraction of the total construction at the site. Entire complexes of buildings, terraces, and ceremonial spaces remain buried, waiting for future archaeologists to uncover their secrets. The application of modern dating techniques has also refined our understanding of when Machu Picchu was built and occupied. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials found in construction contexts suggests that the site was built slightly earlier than previously believed, possibly beginning around 1420 CE during the reign of Pacacuti's predecessor, Viracocha Inca. However, the major construction phases clearly occurred under Pacacuti's direction, confirming the historical accounts that credit him with creating the magnificent royal estate. Perhaps even more intriguing has been the discovery of evidence for pre-Inca occupation of the site. Archaeological layers beneath the Inca construction contain artifacts and features that suggest the area was considered sacred and possibly occupied by earlier cultures for centuries before the Inca built their royal estate there. This finding supports the theory that the Inca didn't choose the location of Machu Picchu arbitrarily, but rather built upon a place that had been recognized as spiritually significant by their predecessors. Recent bioarchaeological studies of human remains found at Machu Picchu have provided fascinating insights into the lives and health of the people who lived there. Contrary to popular assumptions about the harsh conditions of life in the ancient world, the skeletal evidence suggests that the inhabitants of Machu Picchu enjoyed remarkably good health and nutrition. Their bones show few signs of the diseases and nutritional deficiencies that plagued many ancient populations. This evidence of prosperity and good health supports the theory that Machu Picchu was indeed a royal estate where the inhabitants enjoyed access to the best food, medical care, and living conditions available in the Inca Empire. Isotopic analysis of the bones has even revealed details about the diet of Machu Picchu's inhabitants, showing that they consumed a varied diet that included both highland and lowland foods, further evidence of the site's elite status and extensive trade connections. One of the most exciting recent developments in Machu Picchu research has been the application of advanced imaging and measurement technologies to understand the site's engineering and construction techniques. Laser scanning has created precise three-dimensional models of the ruins that allow researchers to analyze the stonework with unprecedented accuracy. These studies have revealed new details about Inca construction techniques, including evidence that the builders used sophisticated mathematical principles to ensure the stability and longevity of their structures. The famous precision of Inca stonework isn't just the result of skilled craftsmanship, but reflects an understanding of geometry and structural engineering that was far in advance of anything else in the Americas at the time. Climate and environmental studies have also contributed to our understanding of Machu Picchu's history and eventual abandonment. Analysis of pollen and other environmental indicators preserved in nearby bogs and lakes has revealed changes in climate and vegetation that occurred during the site's occupation and abandonment. This research suggests that the inhabitants of Machu Picchu had to adapt to significant environmental challenges, including periods of drought and increased rainfall that would have affected agricultural productivity. The environmental research has also shed light on the sophisticated ecological management practices of the Inca. Rather than simply exploiting their environment, the inhabitants of Machu Picchu appear to have actively managed the landscape to enhance its productivity and sustainability. They planted trees to prevent erosion, created artificial wetlands to attract birds and other wildlife, and developed crop varieties specifically adapted to the challenging mountain environment. Modern archaeological techniques have also revealed new information about the complex water management system at Machu Picchu. Careful excavation and analysis have shown that the site's fountains and drainage systems were even more sophisticated than previously realized, incorporating features that controlled water pressure, prevented contamination, and even created musical sounds for ceremonial purposes. One particularly remarkable discovery has been the identification of underground chambers and passages that may have served as storage areas for precious objects, or as sacred spaces for private religious ceremonies. These hidden areas, accessible only through concealed entrances, suggests that Machu Picchu had levels of secrecy and security appropriate for a royal residence that contained valuable treasures and sensitive political information. Recent research has also focused on understanding the broader landscape context of Machu Picchu. Rather than viewing it as an isolated site, archaeologists now recognize that it was part of a larger network of royal estates, religious sites, and administrative centers that extended throughout the Sacred Valley and beyond. This network was connected by an intricate system of roads, paths, and communication lines that allowed the Inca elite to maintain control over their vast empire. The study of these connections has revealed that Machu Picchu played a much more important role in the imperial administration than previously suspected. Rather than being simply a private retreat, it may have served as a crucial link in the chain of communication and control that held the Inca Empire together. Messages and goods flowing between the capital at Cusco and the eastern provinces would have passed through or near Machu Picchu, making it a vital node in the imperial network. Perhaps most importantly, modern archaeological research at Machu Picchu has been conducted in close collaboration with local indigenous communities whose ancestors were the original guardians of the site. This collaboration has brought new perspectives and traditional knowledge that have enriched our understanding of Machu Picchu's significance and challenged Western assumptions about archaeological interpretation. Indigenous scholars and community leaders have shared oral traditions that provide alternative explanations for various features of the site, often revealing symbolic and spiritual meanings that purely material analysis might miss. For example, traditional knowledge about Andean astronomy and agricultural practices has helped archaeologists understand the sophisticated calendar systems embedded in the architecture and landscape of Machu Picchu. This collaborative approach has also led to important discoveries about the continuing cultural significance of Machu Picchu for contemporary Quechua communities. Many features of the site that archaeologists initially interpreted as purely functional or decorative have deeper meanings related to ongoing spiritual and cultural practices. The site remains a living sacred landscape for many indigenous people, not just an ancient ruin to be studied and preserved. The integration of traditional knowledge with modern scientific methods has produced some of the most significant recent insights into Machu Picchu's secrets. For instance, understanding traditional Andean concepts of reciprocity and cosmic balance has helped explain the complex relationships between different areas of the site and their functions in the broader landscape of sacred geography. One of the most enduring mysteries surrounding Machu Picchu concerns not its construction or purpose, but its abandonment. Why would the Inca abandon such a magnificent and strategically important site? The answer to this question reveals as much about the collapse of the Inca Empire as it does about the specific fate of this remarkable mountain city. The timing of Machu Picchu's abandonment appears to coincide with the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire, but the relationship between these events is more complex than it might initially appear. The site wasn't destroyed by Spanish soldiers or abandoned in panic as conquistadors approached. Instead, the evidence suggests a more gradual and deliberate abandonment that began even before the Spanish arrival and continued for several decades afterward. To understand this process, we must first understand the catastrophic impact of European diseases on the indigenous populations of the Americas. Smallpox, typhus, and other diseases brought by European contact spread through the Inca Empire years before Spanish soldiers ever reached Machu Picchu. These epidemics killed millions of people, including much of the imperial family and administrative elite who would have been responsible for maintaining royal estates like Machu Picchu. The demographic collapse caused by disease was so severe that it fundamentally disrupted the social and economic systems that made sites like Machu Picchu possible. The complex networks of tribute labor, food production, and administrative control that supported the royal estates broke down as communities struggled simply to survive. Without the thousands of workers who maintained the terraces, buildings, and water systems, even the most magnificent Inca sites became impossible to sustain. But disease was only the beginning of the empire's troubles. The death of the Emperor Huayna Capac from smallpox in 1525 triggered a devastating civil war between his sons Atahualpa and Huáscar. This conflict divided the empire just as Spanish conquistadors were arriving on the coast, creating the perfect conditions for the relatively small Spanish force to overthrow what had been the largest empire in the Americas. The Civil War had particularly severe consequences for sites like Machu Picchu that were associated with specific imperial lineages. As different factions fought for control of the empire, the resources needed to maintain royal estates were diverted to military campaigns. The specialized knowledge required to operate the complex systems at Machu Picchu, everything from agricultural techniques to astronomical observations to water management, was lost as the educated elite died in battle or fled to remote strongholds. Archaeological evidence from Machu Picchu itself supports this picture of gradual abandonment rather than sudden destruction. The site shows no signs of violence or hasty evacuation. Instead, the material evidence suggests that the inhabitants carefully removed valuable objects and important religious items before departing, leaving behind only everyday pottery and tools that weren't worth transporting to their new homes. This careful evacuation process probably took place over several years, as different groups of inhabitants left at different times for different reasons. Some may have departed when disease reduced the population below the level needed to maintain the site effectively. Others may have left when the Civil War disrupted the political and economic networks that supported their presence there. Still others may have remained until Spanish colonial administrators began consolidating control over the region and requiring tribute payments that made the remote location of Machu Picchu more of a burden than an asset. The final abandonment of Machu Picchu was probably completed sometime between 1540 and 1570, as the last Inca resistance was crushed and the Spanish colonial system was fully established. By this time, the site's isolation, which had once been its greatest protection, had become an insurmountable disadvantage. Without the imperial road system and administrative networks that had connected it to the broader empire, Machu Picchu was simply too remote to sustain a significant population. But the abandonment of Machu Picchu as a royal estate didn't mean that the site was completely forgotten or unused. Local indigenous communities continued to visit the ruins for religious ceremonies and to maintain the agricultural terraces on a smaller scale. Some families may have continued to live among the ruins seasonally, using them as shelter during certain times of the year or for specific activities like weaving or food processing. This continuing use by local communities explains why the site was relatively well preserved when Hiram Bingham arrived in 1911. The buildings hadn't been deliberately destroyed or systematically looted. They had simply been gradually overgrown by vegetation as fewer and fewer people lived there permanently. The families that Bingham encountered were the latest in a long line of guardians who had preserved Machu Picchu not as an archaeological site, but as part of their living cultural heritage. The Spanish colonial administration was aware of Machu Picchu's existence. Colonial records mention ruins in the area and describe tribute obligations for local indigenous communities that clearly lived near the site. However, the Spanish showed little interest in a remote mountain ruin that contained no obvious wealth and served no strategic purpose. They were much more concerned with exploiting the rich silver mines of Potosí and controlling the major population centers of the former empire. This benign neglect by Spanish colonial authorities probably saved Machu Picchu from the destruction that befell many other Inca sites. Major temples and palaces in accessible locations were systematically dismantled to provide stone for Spanish buildings and churches. The remote location that had made Machu Picchu a perfect royal retreat also protected it from this destructive process. The mystery of Machu Picchu's abandonment reminds us that the fall of great civilizations is rarely the dramatic, sudden collapse depicted in popular imagination. Instead, it's usually a complex process involving multiple factors: disease, war, economic disruption, environmental change, and social transformation that unfold over decades or even centuries. The empty terraces and silent buildings of Machu Picchu stand as a monument not just to Inca engineering and artistic achievement, but to the fragility of even the most sophisticated human societies. In the centuries since its rediscovery, Machu Picchu has inspired countless theories about its purpose, construction, and significance. While serious archaeological research has provided increasingly clear evidence that the site served as a royal estate, the popular imagination has been captured by more exotic possibilities that reveal as much about our own fascinations and anxieties as they do about the ancient past. Some of the most persistent alternative theories have focused on Machu Picchu's astronomical alignments and suggested that it served primarily as an ancient observatory or calendar site. Proponents of this theory point to the precise alignment of various structures with celestial events and argue that the site's primary purpose was scientific rather than residential or administrative. While there's no doubt that astronomical observation was an important activity at Machu Picchu, the observatory theory faces several problems when examined closely. First, the astronomical alignments, while impressive, are not unique to Machu Picchu. They appear at numerous other Inca sites throughout the empire. Second, the residential and administrative features of the site are too extensive to support the idea that it served primarily as an observatory. And third, we know from historical sources that astronomical observation was integrated into all aspects of Inca religious and political life, so the presence of such features doesn't indicate a specialized astronomical function. Another popular theory has suggested that Machu Picchu served as a fortress or military installation designed to protect the Inca Empire from enemies approaching from the eastern jungle. This theory points to the site's defensive location and the substantial walls that surround many of the structures as evidence of its military purpose. However, careful analysis of the site's architecture and layout reveals that it was poorly designed for defensive purposes. The walls that appear defensive are actually agricultural terraces and architectural features designed to create level building platforms on steep terrain. The site has no proper fortifications, no weapon storage areas, and no other features that would be expected in a military installation. Moreover, the location, while dramatic, is actually quite vulnerable to siege tactics and would be difficult to supply during a prolonged conflict. Perhaps the most imaginative theories have suggested extraterrestrial or supernatural explanations for Machu Picchu's construction. These theories typically focus on the precision of the stonework and the difficulty of transporting massive stone blocks to such a remote location, arguing that the technology required exceeds what should have been possible for a 15th century civilization. While these theories make for entertaining speculation, they fundamentally misunderstand both Inca capabilities and the nature of the engineering challenges involved in building Machu Picchu. Archaeological research has provided clear evidence of the techniques used by Inca builders, including the tools, ramps, and organizational methods that made such impressive construction possible. More importantly, attributing Inca achievements to extraterrestrial intervention diminishes the remarkable human intelligence and creativity that actually produced these monuments. A more scholarly but still controversial theory has suggested that Machu Picchu was built much earlier than currently believed, possibly thousands of years before the Inca Empire existed. Proponents of this theory argue that the most sophisticated stonework shows techniques and styles that differ from other known Inca construction and must represent the work of an earlier, unknown civilization. This theory has been definitively disproven by radiocarbon dating, stratigraphic analysis, and other archaeological methods that clearly show the site was built and occupied during the Inca period. The variations in construction techniques noted by proponents of the earlier date theory actually reflect the different phases of construction and the different functions of various buildings, not different time periods or civilizations. Perhaps more interesting than these alternative theories are the legends and oral traditions of local indigenous communities about Machu Picchu and its significance. These traditions often preserve historical memories and cultural knowledge that complement and enrich the archaeological record, even when they can't be taken as literal historical accounts. Many local legends describe Machu Picchu as a place where the physical and spiritual worlds intersect, where shamans and priests could communicate directly with mountain spirits and celestial gods. These stories often emphasize the site's role in maintaining cosmic balance and protecting the surrounding valleys from natural disasters and spiritual threats. Other traditions describe hidden chambers within the site that contain treasures or sacred objects that were concealed when the Spanish arrived. While numerous searches have failed to locate such chambers, these legends reflect the historical reality that many Inca sites did contain hidden storage areas and that valuable objects were often concealed from Spanish looters. Some of the most intriguing legends describe Machu Picchu as a place of healing, where people with serious illnesses or spiritual problems could come to be cured by the powerful energies concentrated at the site. These traditions may preserve memories of the site's role in traditional Andean medicine, which emphasize the connection between physical health and spiritual well-being. Modern New Age movements have embraced many of these traditional legends while adding their own interpretations that emphasize concepts like energy vortexes, crystal healing, and spiritual transformation. While these modern interpretations often have little connection to historical Inca beliefs, they reflect the continuing power of Machu Picchu to inspire people to think about the relationship between human consciousness and the natural world. Perhaps the most persistent legend about Machu Picchu concerns the lost treasures of the Inca, vast hoards of gold and silver that were supposedly hidden when the Spanish conquest began. Treasure hunters have searched the site and surrounding areas for centuries, convinced that somewhere in the mountain caves and hidden chambers lies a fortune in precious metals and jeweled artifacts. While it's certainly possible that some valuable objects remain hidden in the area, the treasure hunting has generally been based on misunderstanding of Inca culture and values. For the Inca, the most precious objects were often textiles, feathers, and ceremonial items that had little intrinsic material value but great spiritual and social significance. The Spanish obsession with gold and silver caused them to melt down countless Inca artifacts, destroying irreplaceable artistic and religious objects to create bullion that could be shipped back to Europe. Today, Machu Picchu receives more than 1 million visitors annually, making it one of the most popular tourist destinations in South America and a UNESCO World Heritage Site of enormous cultural and economic significance. But this modern pilgrimage to the ancient site raises complex questions about preservation, cultural respect, and the commodification of indigenous heritage that echo many of the same conflicts that have surrounded the site since its rediscovery. The transformation of Machu Picchu from a lost archaeological site to a global tourist destination began almost immediately after Bingham's expeditions made it famous in the early 20th century. By the 1920s, the first tourists were making the arduous journey by train and foot to see the ruins, and the Peruvian government was beginning to recognize the site's potential for promoting international tourism and national pride. The construction of a road to the site in the 1940s and the development of tourist infrastructure in the nearby town of Aguas Calientes gradually made Machu Picchu more accessible to visitors from around the world. The completion of the Hiram Bingham Highway in the 1970s brought bus access directly to the ruins, dramatically increasing the number of visitors and beginning the transformation of the site into a mass tourism destination. This increased accessibility brought both benefits and challenges that continue to shape debates about the site's management today. On the positive side, tourism has provided economic opportunities for local communities and generated resources that can be used for site conservation and archaeological research. The global attention focused on Machu Picchu has also increased awareness of Inca culture and Peruvian history, contributing to a greater appreciation for indigenous achievements and perspectives. However, the massive increase in visitation has also created serious problems for site preservation. The fragile stonework and agricultural terraces were never designed to accommodate thousands of visitors daily, and the wear caused by foot traffic, touching, and inadvertent damage has become a major conservation concern. Erosion, pollution, and infrastructure development to support tourism have also impacted the broader landscape around the site. Perhaps more problematically, the commercialization of Machu Picchu has often ignored or marginalized the perspectives and interests of the indigenous communities whose ancestors built and maintained the site. Tourism development has frequently proceeded without meaningful consultation with local Quechua communities, and the economic benefits of tourism have not always reached the people with the strongest cultural connections to the site. These issues have led to ongoing conflicts between different stakeholders with competing interests in the site's management. Archaeological researchers want to preserve the ruins for future study and maintain their authenticity as historical documents. Tourism operators want to maximize visitor access and develop infrastructure to support their businesses. Government officials want to balance conservation with economic development and international prestige. And indigenous communities want recognition of their cultural rights and meaningful participation in decisions that affect their ancestral heritage. Recent years have seen growing recognition that sustainable management of Machu Picchu requires addressing these competing interests through collaborative approaches that respect both the site's archaeological value and its continuing cultural significance for indigenous communities. New management policies have limited daily visitor numbers, established designated walking routes to reduce damage, and required all tourists to be accompanied by licensed guides who can provide education about the site's history and significance. There has also been increased emphasis on community-based tourism initiatives that provide economic opportunities for local Quechua families while giving visitors more authentic and respectful experiences of indigenous culture. These programs often include traditional weaving demonstrations, agricultural workshops on restored Inca terraces, and storytelling sessions that share oral traditions about the site's history and spiritual significance. The modern pilgrimage to Machu Picchu has also inspired numerous attempts to recreate or understand the spiritual experiences that the site may have provided for its original inhabitants. Visitors often report profound emotional responses to the ruins, describing feelings of awe, connection to nature, and spiritual transformation that seem to transcend mere sightseeing. While these contemporary spiritual experiences may have little connection to historical Inca religious practices, they reflect the continuing power of the site to inspire people to think about humanity's relationship to the natural world and the achievements of ancient civilizations. For many visitors, Machu Picchu serves as a reminder of possibilities for living more harmoniously with the environment and creating societies that prioritize spiritual and aesthetic values alongside material progress. The challenge for the future lies in managing this modern pilgrimage in ways that honor both the historical significance of Machu Picchu and its continuing importance for contemporary communities. This requires recognizing that the site's value extends far beyond its appeal to tourists or its importance to researchers. It remains a living part of indigenous cultural heritage that deserves respect and protection for future generations. As we reflect on the secrets of Machu Picchu and their relevance for our modern world, Perhaps the most important lesson is the reminder that human beings are capable of creating works of extraordinary beauty and sophistication when they work in harmony with rather than in opposition to the natural world. The Inca builders of Machu Picchu achieved something that we still struggle to accomplish today. They created a sustainable civilization that met human needs while respecting and enhancing the environment that supported it. As our journey through the secrets of Machu Picchu draws to a close, it's worth reflecting on what this remarkable site can teach us about human potential, environmental stewardship, and the enduring power of cultural heritage. The stone terraces and precisely fitted walls that have survived 5 centuries in one of the world's most challenging environments stand as testimony to achievements that continue to inspire and challenge us today. Perhaps the most profound lesson of Machu Picchu lies in its demonstration of what becomes possible when human ingenuity works in partnership with rather than opposition to natural forces. The Inca builders didn't conquer the mountain landscape, they learned to understand its rhythms, respect its limitations, and harness its potential in ways that enhanced rather than degraded the environment. The result was a civilization that sustained itself for generations while creating works of lasting beauty and scientific sophistication. This approach to environmental management has profound relevance for our contemporary world, where the consequences of treating nature as something to be dominated and exploited have become increasingly apparent. Climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental degradation on a global scale force us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about progress and development that have guided human societies since the Industrial Revolution. The agricultural terraces of Machu Picchu, still productive after 5 centuries, offer a powerful counterexample to industrial farming methods that have depleted soil, contaminated water supplies, and contributed to the loss of genetic diversity in food crops. The sophisticated water management systems demonstrate principles of conservation and sustainability that could inform contemporary efforts to address water scarcity and urban planning challenges. But perhaps most importantly, Machu Picchu reminds us that technological sophistication and environmental sustainability are not incompatible goals. The Inca achieved remarkable feats of engineering and architecture while maintaining ecological balance and creating systems that could sustain themselves indefinitely if properly maintained. Their example suggests that our contemporary choice between technological progress and environmental protection may be a false dilemma based on flawed assumptions about the relationship between human society and the natural world. The social and political lessons of Machu Picchu are equally relevant for our modern world. The site represents the achievements of a complex, hierarchical society that nonetheless maintained principles of reciprocity and collective responsibility that ensured basic needs were met for all members of the community. While the Inca Empire was certainly not a democracy in any modern sense, its emphasis on mutual obligation and sustainable resource management offers insights into alternative models of social organization. The careful planning and execution required to build and maintain Machu Picchu also demonstrate the importance of long-term thinking and collective commitment to shared goals. In an era when political and economic decisions are increasingly driven by short-term considerations and immediate returns, the Inca example reminds us of what becomes possible when societies commit to projects that may take generations to complete and require sustained cooperation across different social groups. The preservation and continued study of Machu Picchu also highlight the importance of protecting cultural heritage, not just as a monument to the past, but as a resource for understanding alternative ways of organizing human societies and relating to the environment. Indigenous knowledge systems preserved at sites like Machu Picchu contain centuries of accumulated wisdom about sustainable living practices, ecological management, and social organization that remain relevant for contemporary challenges. However, this preservation must be carried out in ways that respect the rights and interests of the indigenous communities who are the inheritors of this cultural heritage. The example of Machu Picchu demonstrates both the possibilities and the pitfalls of making ancient sites accessible to global audiences while maintaining their authenticity and cultural significance for local communities. The ongoing collaboration between international researchers and Quechua communities around Machu Picchu provides a model for how archaeological and historical research can be conducted in ways that honor indigenous knowledge and perspectives while contributing to broader understanding of human achievement and possibility. This collaborative approach recognizes that the secrets of sites like Machu Picchu can't be fully understood through Western scientific methods alone, but require integration of traditional knowledge systems and cultural perspectives that have been maintained by indigenous communities for generations. As we face unprecedented global challenges requiring international cooperation and innovative thinking, the example of Machu Picchu reminds us that human beings have repeatedly demonstrated the capacity to achieve extraordinary things when they combine scientific knowledge, artistic vision, spiritual insight, and respect for the natural world. The builders of this mountain city left us more than just impressive ruins. They left a blueprint for sustainable civilization that remains as relevant today as it was 5 centuries ago. The secrets of Machu Picchu ultimately teach us that the boundaries between art and science, between spiritual practice and practical knowledge, between human achievement and environmental stewardship, are artificial divisions that limit our potential for creating truly sustainable and fulfilling ways of life. The Inca understanding of their mountain city as both a political center and a sacred landscape, both an engineering marvel and a work of art, both a human achievement and a celebration of natural beauty, offers a more integrated and holistic approach to human development that our modern world desperately needs. As night falls over the Andes and the stars that once guided Inca astronomers emerge in the clear mountain air, the stones of Machu Picchu continue their silent testimony to the possibilities that emerge when human creativity works in harmony with natural forces. The lost city of the Incas was never truly lost. Its lessons and inspiration have been waiting patiently for us to rediscover them and apply them to the challenges of our own time. In the end, perhaps that is the greatest secret of Machu Picchu, that it was built not just for the emperors and priests of a vanished empire, but for all of us who seek to understand what human beings can achieve when they dare to dream beyond the limitations of their time and place. The mountain city stands eternal, a stone poem written in the sky, reminding us that the impossible becomes possible when vision, knowledge, and respect for the sacred come together in service of something greater than ourselves. And so our journey through the secrets of Machu Picchu comes to an end, but the lessons and inspiration we've discovered will continue to resonate long after these words have faded into the peaceful quiet of sleep. In your dreams tonight, perhaps you'll walk those ancient stone pathways, breathe the thin mountain air, and feel for yourself the power and mystery that continue to draw pilgrims from around the world to this most sacred of places, where earth reaches toward heaven and human achievement touches the eternal. Sweet dreams, fellow travelers. The secrets of the ancients are never truly lost. They're simply waiting for us to be wise enough to listen and learn.